At this time, we'll call up House Bill 231, Yancey County Occupancy Tax. Representative Green, you're recognized to present your bill. Excuse me for 1 second. I'd like to recognize Representative Green. Please suspend for a moment. Representative Warren, you're recognized to send forth the Occupancy Tax Subcommittee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning, the subcommittee heard 5 bills. They all were in compliance with the occupancy standards, and we referred them all to the full committee here.
Thank you, Representative Warren. Representative Green, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 231 is a occupancy tax bill dealing with Yancey County. They currently are at 3% and would ask to be able to increase that to up to 6% as the House guidelines permit.
Questions or comments from the committee? Representative Warren.
For a motion at the appropriate time.
It's at the appropriate time. You're recognized.
All right, we make a motion for a favorable report for the House Bill 231 with a referral to rules.
Members, you've heard the motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Representative Green, thank you. Representative Green, you're also recognized for House Bill 232, Mitchell County Occupancy Tax Modification.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again. And this would also allow Mitchell County to increase their rate to up to 6%. That's a request from the Mitchell County Commissioners, and would appreciate your support.
Members of the committee, you've heard the explanation of the bills. Further discussion, debate? Hearing none. A motion, please. Representative Warren, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion for a favorable report for House Bill 232 with a referral to rules.
Members of the committee, you've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Representative Green. And a third time, House Bill 233, Avery County Occupancy Tax.
All right, sir. Thank you once again. And this is a bill giving initial authorization for Avery County to be able to have an occupancy tax. There's about 8 municipalities in Avery County. Several of them currently use an occupancy tax, but the county has never obtained authorization, and they'd like to be included there. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Further discussion or debate from the committee? Representative Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to make a favorable report for House Bill 233 with a referral to rules.
Members of the committee, you've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
yes,
thank you, members of the committee.
Yes, sir. At this time, I'd like to recognize Representative White, House Bill 238, Town of Clayton Occupancy Tax. Representative White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The House Bill 238 would create a special taxing district consisting of that part of the town of Clayton located within Johnston County. The town of Clayton, the town council of the town of Clayton would serve as the governing body of the district and would be authorized to levy a room tax, occupancy tax of up to 2% in the district. And then in Johnston County, we have a little special thing going on. So the proceeds of the tax is remitted to the Johnston County Tourism Authority, where they allocate it appropriately to the different districts.
Members, you've heard the explanation of the bill. Further discussion, debate? Representative Warren, you're making a record of it here.
It doesn't seem the same without Representative Green here, but I'd like to make a motion for a favorable report for 238 with a referral rules.
Members, you've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, we will take up House Bill 240, Town of Four Oaks Occupancy Tax Authorization. Representative Strickland, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for the town. House Bill 240 would authorize the town of Four Oaks to levy up to a 2% room occupancy tax, and they currently do not have it, and it would be administered by the town and also the Johnston County Tourism Authority.
Thank you. Members, you've heard the explanation of the bill. Representative Watford.
Like to share the love. Motion at the proper time.
It's the proper time, Representative Watford.
Make a move for a favorable report to House Bill 240 and referral to rules.
Members of the committee have heard the motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Representative Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
At this time, we will recognize Representative John House Bill 288. And Representative Clampett is along as a sidekick.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much. I know it's not appropriate to say, but this is a very simple bill.
That's dangerous territory in this committee, Representative John.
Yes. It very simply, it puts some substance to the "thank you for your service" statement in reference to the fire department rescue squad members. It does not relieve them from paying the regular registration fee, but simply the fee for the special plate. These folks are important members of our community. They sacrifice a lot to keep us safe. In rural areas particularly, these identification plates may be the only way of identifying an emergency vehicle on the way to a fire. So I submit the bill to you. I'm proud to have Representative Clampett as a co-sponsor on this bill, a former firefighter, and we'll stand for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Questions or comment from the committee? Representative Zinger.
Motion at the appropriate time.
Further discussion or debate? Hearing none, Representative Zinger, you're recognized.
Make a motion for a favorable report and referral to rules.
Members, you've heard the motion on the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Representative John.
Thank you,
Representative Clampett.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
And now for the main event. We'd like to welcome you all here because we know you're all anticipating this heavily. At this time, I'd like to recognize Representative Sane for House Bill 347, Sports Wagering. Let the games begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure to be in finance, especially when you're cheering. It's great to be back with you, so thank you.
Excuse me one second, Representative Sane, I'm sorry. This is a PCS. Representative Warren moves to have the PCS before us. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The PCS is properly before us. I am sorry for the interruption. Representative Sane.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. And I do have co-sponsors with me today here in the committee and here beside me. I'll be brief on my overview. I know that finance likes to deal with the finance portion. I'll give you just a brief intro to the bill. House 347 Act to authorize and regulate sports wagering. And I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it with you this morning. During last session, if you were here, you'll recall that there were two bills that ran in the House. My co-sponsors and I have taken a lot of the input from many of you about how to improve the bill, and through a very intentional process have incorporated that input into House Bill 347. It's truly a bipartisan effort. The four sponsors, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, are joined by 52 other members of the House representing both parties. I hope whether you are for or against the bill, you appreciate the effort to move something in a truly collaborative fashion. Since the 2018 U.S. Supreme Court decision in Murphy versus the NCAA overturned the federal prohibition on sports betting outside of Nevada, 32 states plus the District of Columbia offer sports betting. 4 other states have legalized betting but have yet to implement it. Today, digital betting is available in 23 states, including our neighbors, Virginia and Tennessee. Sports betting tax rates range from 6.75% in Iowa and Nevada to, you might guess, New York has a 51% tax in New York, so a little high there. Our selected tax rate at 14% is slightly higher than the statistical average. Our previous bill had a tax rate of 8%. Again, through our efforts and conversations, we've settled on a higher number. At $1 million per license, that is the tops in licensing fees among all states. We require obtaining an interactive sports wagering license before accepting sports wagers, require the commission to authorize at least 10 but not more than 12 interactive sports wagering operators to offer and accept sports wagers to and from registered players on sporting events, which include professional sports, college sports, electronic sports, amateur sports, and any other event approved by the commission. It requires licensed applicants to submit an application and a $1 million licensing fee to the commission, as I mentioned before, and requires the fee to be refunded if the application is denied, minus the expenses. I will say that we do have a rich history of sports in this state. Our professional teams have all weighed in on this issue and are supportive. That would be the Carolina Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, Charlotte Hornets, and of course the racetrack as well. So appreciate your consideration of the bill. Mr. Chairman, I stand before you for any questions.
Thank you. And also, members of the committee, we will vote on this bill today, And we are only taking up amendments or discussion on the finance piece. We'll all be present on the floor for the full show. Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it may be early in this discussion, but when ready, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. We'll hold that discussion from the committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Representative Butler.
I'd like to be recognized to speak on the bill and then to offer an amendment if that's the order the chairman would like.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've read this bill several times and keep finding things. In Commerce yesterday, I offered a couple of amendments that didn't make it, but I want to talk about initially, if you look on page 22 at line 18, this is something I found this morning, and I'm concerned in that paragraph. It talks about the secretary may require a bond. I didn't see that until this morning, so I think we ought to offer an amendment on the floor to change that language to that the secretary shall. Because if this bill, if the purported rationale behind this bill is to generate revenue, it seems to me that we ought to do whatever we can do to ensure that those privilege taxes are paid. And I think prudence would suggest that we should require a bond and not make it discretionary. So that's just something to think of as we move toward the floor debate on this bill. And on page 21, line 21, the description of the privilege tax and how we're going to calculate that ensues. And so, as I understand it, the gross revenue generated as adjusted after expenses is what we are calculating our 14% privilege tax upon. And then, of course, there are some exemptions from that. Allowable expenses, of course, the payment of winnings to winners in the process. But I'm concerned about these, quote, promotional credits. I'm going to call this the hook money, because this is the money that lures people to begin gambling in the first place, in large part. Not everyone, but some. $400 credit on your account, and you can bet that, and hopefully by that point the hook is set and you become a regular customer. But the thing about this that is concerning is that this hook money is an allowable expense. So in other words, anything used, as I understand it, to lure a player is deductible against what taxes are paid. So until January 1st of 2025, that hook money is unlimited. So you can pay and lure people to whatever extent you feel possible. That can be an enormous amount of money. So we're going to see a lot of seed money in year one. So it's possible we could make no money at all in year one if the platform holder decides they want to spend all of their income and pay it back into the community as hook money. We're powerless to do anything about that. And then you can see it steps down in subsequent years. But I'll tell you, I did a quick calculation. If you assume that the revenue in year two, let's say, is $1 billion, and that's grossly conservative because in New Jersey, pardon me, we know that in year two it was several $billion. But let's just argue and say that the revenue in year 25 is $1 billion. You're talking about $25 million in seed money at a very conservative estimate that's moving into our community to attract new gamblers. It's a lot of money. Then in the next year it's 2%, and then until the year 2027 we don't get to the point where they're not permitted to do that. So for the first few years of this thing, we are going to see an extraordinary flood of money coming into the community to lure young gamblers, first-time gamblers, people who hadn't thought about gambling but see that $400, $500 temptation. And so I think all of that's a problem to begin with. But certainly, if that is the case, and if they can reduce the amount by which they pay taxes by flooding the market with that seed money, in no circumstance, and this brings me, Mr. Chairman, to my amendment, in no circumstance should we then allow, and you'll see at Section 7 toward the end of the bill, in no circumstance should we allow State Lottery Commission Fund to pay $14 million to start this thing up and to supervise it. So I just feel like if they can impoverish themselves intentionally by putting this hook money out and use that to reduce the amount of tax they're going to pay, we should not be responsible for, we should not allow the Lottery Commission Fund to be robbed of $14 million to facilitate this startup. So this amendment I offer, Mr. Chairman, would remove that. And that money, in my opinion, should come from the platform owners themselves. And so this bill would remove that $14 million loan, if you will, from the Lottery Commission Fund. And I would urge you to support it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative Butler. Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Butler. I understand you're not a fan of the bill and appreciate many of your arguments. I will say, though, that it's not money, it's a credit, like a free donut coupon. So no one taxes a business on that. It's the same here. Furthermore, part of the promos that would happen to get people on their platforms are one, already being advertised. If you watch any sporting event today, and I know I hope your brackets are better than mine, but I trust they're probably not. If you watched basketball at all this weekend, you did see advertising to that effect. But also, it's very important that understanding that the provision is in having the promos is important because it incentivizes people who are now in this state to the tune of about $4 billion wagering in illegal markets. So advertising to help them understand that here is a legal market, and once this bill becomes law, will actually bring in that revenue. Tennessee, I think after the first year or 2 years, end up with $100 million in extra revenue. So I think that shorting ourselves at any point would be a mistake. It'd be fiscally irresponsible if the purpose of this is to raise revenue for the state. So I just appreciate if the committee would vote down the amendment.
Representative Butler moves the adoption of her amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Amendment fails. Thank you, Representative Butler. At this time, Representative Longest. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr.
Longest.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Longest, yes.
Longest, forgive me.
You're fine. I have two amendments that I'd like to offer on the bill. One, I might take these out of order since.
Representative Longest, which one would you like to present first?
H347 AST 17 V2. Or sorry, that's Representative Butler's amendment.
I've got.
AST
I would appreciate it if you would offer that again.
Okay.
I hope we're not done. Well, you can try it. I've got AST-18 V3.
That's correct, sir.
All right.
This amendment speaks to what Representative Butler was just referring to, the promotions that the bill entitles the operators of the platforms to offer. One of the things that we've been told about this bill is that there's an immense, essentially gray or black market of folks who are participating in gambling in North Carolina already. If the demand is so high, then I don't see the need for any effort to bring new people into the platforms that aren't already participating. I think in particular, the promotions will attract folks who are not already gambling, and will attract folks that may subsequently develop gambling addictions or perhaps target those populations, which advocates of this bill says do not primarily participate in gambling, that is those who are lower income. For all those reasons, I think that promotions don't serve the interest of the state, and so I'd ask that the promotion deduction be removed from the bill. And that's all the amendment does.
Thank you. Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The same argument that I just made stands, and I just ask that you vote the amendment down.
And I'd like ayes and nays if that's okay.
Certainly. Representative Longuest moves for the adoption of his amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Representatives Alexander, Balcom, no. Bell, Butler, aye. Carney, no. Clemens, no. Cotham, Everett, no. Fontenot, no. Hall, Harris, no. Jackson, no. Lofton, no. Longest,
Yes.
yes. Lowry,
No.
no. Pike,
Yes.
yes. Sauls, Warren, no. Watford, no. Winslow, no. Zanger, no. Jones, no. Howard, Ross, no. Tyson,
Yeah, no, excuse me.
Tyson, no. Bradford,
No.
no. Kidwell,
No.
no. Setzer,
No.
no. Setzer, no. And Ray? No. Ray, no.
The amendment fails 20-3.
Mr. Chair, I have a second amendment I'd like to offer.
Certainly. Please explain your amendment.
Sure. So the primary argument for the state to adopt sports betting is that it'll generate revenue for the state. However, the revenue initially proposed and the revenue settled on in the bill last year is far lower than some states are successfully getting from sports gambling operators. In New York, as the sponsor previously alluded to, the rate is 51%. I'll also add that in New Hampshire, where instead of setting a certain number of licenses, the state created an RFP process and solicited bids from the operators, putting the operators against each other. The winning bid was for a 51% privilege tax rate, and that was the decisive element in determining in their lottery commission deciding to offer a license to that operator. So operators are willing to accept higher tax rates for the privilege of access to markets. And I would submit that, you know, when it comes to gambling, they always say that it's the house that always wins, but here it's not exactly clear who the house is. So long as the operators are getting the vast majority of the money, the proceeds, it seems like they're the house. But I think voting in favor of this amendment, ensuring that the state gets the majority of the money, because the state is assuming the majority of the costs and the social harms of addiction, I think that it's only fair that the state, like in New York, like in New Hampshire, accept the majority of the proceeds through a privilege tax of 51%. And so I'm offering a substantial raise to the privilege tax rate, but I think that's justified and is borne out in New York, where in its first year, the state has raised more revenue than any other state through sports gambling.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for the grumpy voice. I'm not grumpy, it's just allergies. But, you know, first of all, this is a consensus bill. Our governor supports it. As I alluded to earlier, 56 members of the House are co-sponsoring it. I would suggest that increasing a tax to 51% in this state is counterintuitive to most of the success that we've had over the last decade. We have found windfalls every cycle when we find that we lower taxes and continue to lower taxes. So I think a reasonable rate, understanding that we are going to tax it at some level, and as I indicated before, our selected tax rate Again, after my co-sponsors and I, talked and after the experience last year and hearing feedback from the body, settled on a tax rate at 14%, which is slightly higher than the statistical average of all those who offer sports betting, all states who offer sports betting. Our previous tax rate was at 8%. So we have come up, and we will see more revenue because of that. But I believe that 51% would be an absolute wrong way to go, and particularly in terms of the way that we've been operating as a state. So I just urge you all to vote against the amendment.
Representative Longest moves for the adoption of his amendment. All in favor say aye. All opposed?
No.
Yes, sir. The amendment is not adopted. Thank you. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Bradford, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion for a favorable report to the PCS for House Bill 347, unfavorable to the original, and rolled into a new PCS and referred to Judiciary 1.
Members, you've heard the motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.